Most people do not work when they are alone. They work when they are seen. When someone is watching, effort increases. Focus sharpens. Discipline appears. Not because they changed, but because they are being observed. There is pressure in being watched, a silent expectation, a need to perform. That pressure creates effort. It creates urgency. It creates temporary discipline. But that discipline is not stable. It depends on the presence of others. It disappears when the room is empty. This is the difference most people never examine. They believe they are disciplined because they can perform under observation, because they can produce effort when required. But remove the audience, and the behavior changes. The urgency fades. The effort drops. The same person, in the same environment, with the same goals, becomes inconsistent. Work is delayed. Focus weakens. Distractions appear. Not because the task changed, but because the condition changed. No one is watching, and without observation, the performance disappears. This reveals something uncomfortable, that the effort was never internal. It was external, driven by perception, driven by expectation, driven by the need to be seen. This is performative discipline. It looks like effort. It feels like effort. But it is conditional. It exists only when there is an audience. And because of that, it cannot be sustained. It cannot compound. It cannot build real progress, because progress requires repetition, consistency, work that continues without interruption. And performative effort cannot do that. It disappears too often. It breaks too easily. Every time the room becomes empty, the pattern resets. This is why many people remain in the same position. They produce effort in short bursts, under observation, under pressure, but they do not produce it consistently. And consistency is the only thing that matters, because effort that appears and disappears never compounds. It resets. Real discipline begins when no one is watching, not when you are observed, but when you are alone. And most people never build that. The absence changes everything. Not the task, not the goal, not the ability, only the presence disappears. And with it, so does the effort. This is the pattern, consistent, repeatable. When no one is watching, there is no immediate consequence for slowing down, no pressure to perform, no expectation to meet. And the mind responds to that absence. It relaxes, it delays, it drifts, because urgency was never internal. It was borrowed from the presence of others, from being observed, from being evaluated. Without that, the structure disappears, the pace changes, the standards lower. This is where inconsistency begins, not in effort, but in environment, in conditions, in what surrounds the work. Most people rely on external structure, schedules, deadlines, supervision, and those structures create temporary discipline. They organize behavior. They enforce effort. But remove them, and the system collapses, because nothing internal replaces them. No internal pressure, no internal standard, no internal enforcement. Only freedom. And freedom without discipline creates drift, creates delay, creates inconsistency. This is why being alone exposes the truth, not who you are in public, but who you are without observation. Because there is nothing to perform for, no one to impress, no one to validate the effort, only the work. And the question becomes simple. Do you continue when it does not matter to anyone else? Most people do not. They wait, they delay, they justify, because the urgency is gone, and without urgency, action slows. This is where time is lost, not in effort, but in absence, in moments where nothing happens. Those moments accumulate, quietly, without attention, until the gap becomes visible between what could have been done and what was actually done. And that gap continues to grow, because the pattern repeats. Every time the room is empty, every time the pressure disappears. This is not a lack of ability, it is a lack of internal structure, a lack of self-imposed standards, a reliance on being watched. And without that, nothing holds. That is the real problem. Not effort, but dependence on observation.
If this message resonates with you,
Like and subscribe for more content like this. This channel is built for people who want control over their focus, not constant noise. There are two types of discipline. One is visible, the other is not. Visible discipline is easy to recognize. It shows up in front of others. It performs under pressure. It responds to expectation. It is clean, structured, controlled, but it is not stable, because it depends on something external, an audience, a deadline, a consequence. Remove those, and the discipline weakens. It loses intensity. It loses consistency. Sometimes it disappears completely. The second type is different, less visible, less recognized. Internal discipline does not rely on observation. It does not require pressure. It does not need validation. It exists without being seen. It shows up in empty rooms, in quiet hours, in moments with no consequence. And that is what makes it difficult, because there is no immediate reward, no recognition, no external reinforcement, only repetition, only process, only continuation. And most people avoid that, not because they cannot do it, but because it feels unnecessary. When no one is watching, effort feels optional. But that is where the difference is built. Internal discipline creates consistency. Consistency creates stability. Stability creates progress. And progress compounds. Not in visible moments, but in repeated ones, in quiet ones, in moments no one sees. This is why two people can appear similar in public, but separate over time. One performs when required, the other performs regardless. One depends on structure, the other creates it. One stops when the pressure is gone, the other continues. That difference is small in the moment, almost invisible, easy to ignore. But over time, it becomes significant, then undeniable. Because consistency accumulates, and inconsistency resets, again and again. Internal discipline does not look impressive. It is quiet, repetitive, unseen. But it is reliable, and reliability creates results. That is the difference most people never build, because they are still waiting to be watched. In the end, the room will always be empty. Not always physically, but eventually. The pressure fades, the expectations disappear, the observation stops, and what remains is you. No audience, no validation, no immediate consequence, just the work. This is where the real decision exists, not when you are watched, but when you are not. Because that moment is honest. There is nothing influencing it, nothing shaping your behavior, only your standard. Most people do not have one, not internally, not consistently. They respond to conditions, to pressure, to observation. And when those disappear, so does the effort. That is why progress stalls, not because of lack of ability, but because of lack of self-enforcement. The ones who move forward are different, not in talent, not in intelligence, not in opportunity, but in standard. They do not wait to be watched. They do not rely on pressure. They do not depend on external structure. They continue, regardless. When the room is empty, they work. When there is no consequence, they continue. Because the standard is internal, not conditional, not temporary. And that makes it stable, predictable, reliable. That reliability compounds, day after day, without interruption, without reset, until the gap becomes obvious between those who need to be watched and those who do not. One waits, the other acts. That is the entire difference. If you understand that, then the next time the room is empty, you already know what to do. Like the video, subscribe. No one is watching. That's when it matters most.